All right, we're live.
Live. This is the coffee CMO coffee talk after the show. A little bit of a summary of what we heard, what we talked about. Latney, another good session this morning, heavily attended. We always run out of time, but we literally went overtime.
I know. I had to apologize for poor time management.
Look, I mean, I consider it a good session when the less I talk, the better, right? The more we've got experts that are talking about, whatever our topic is for the week. We've got other CMOs asking questions, sharing their experience. The chat was blowing up. And this week was all about CMOs managing the CEO relationship, which went a lot of different directions, as you would imagine.
A lot of different directions. It was really awesome, and a huge shout out and thank you to Gary Service, operating partner at Insight. He came on, and he works with over 200 portcos every day, and he's working with CEOs and CMOs. So he sees a lot of relationships. So it was really good to get his point of view on where they can go wrong and where they can go right.
Well, a little bit of both, right? I mean, I think there's so many different variables that make it work. We talked about a few of those today. The difference between metrics and KPIs as one of those. One of my favorite quotes was someone put it in the chat, and I actually looked it up. It's from Babe Ruth. He said, yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. And so really separating, looking at the past and understanding and learning from it, but the difference between reporting on the past and forecasting the future, having a sense of what the outlook is moving forward to show more than just activities, but to show more strategic value in the organization. I thought that was an interesting way of playing the numbers game with the CEO.
Yeah, and just the fact that that's what the board is looking for is an outlook, right? Yeah. And so, I took away, establish a record of reliability early. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like a small thing, but, especially as CMOs, the expectations are always wildly varied and huge. So being able to quickly set realistic expectations and reliably deliver, even if they're small things, then again, you set that pattern. He talked about not getting put in the tactical corner. And I think he said, no one puts baby in the corner. No one puts marketing in the corner. So making sure you're in the room where they're talking about strategy, M&A, product direction, things like that. And I think part of what he said makes you look tactical is kind of the KPIs versus numbers. Mm-hmm. And some KPIs he talked about, which I know he talks about a lot with account-based, is cycle time, deal size, talking more about the quality of opportunities versus just kind of the numbers game. So I thought that was really great insight on some things that we can do just in how we show up.
Yeah, I thought that was good. We definitely talked a little bit about the interpersonal relationships that you have there as well. The where your CEO has come from, what their experience is, whether they're open to feedback outside of their experience and perspectives, all interesting angles. I thought we talked about the metrics and pipeline-oriented CEO, how and when to get them comfortable with the brand investment. We talked about the opposite, where someone who thinks that, hey, if we do a bunch of press releases, our pipeline is going to magically fill up, and making sure they understand that necessarily isn't going to be true either. I thought Gary gave a really good, he said, around the $20 million ARR number is when companies typically start to make a more intentional investment in brand, because they either see they're not getting included in enough deals, or they're not as well known, or they feel like they're coming from behind in bigger deals where they're a more well-known competitor. And so there were still some, even on the sort of justifying this brand, which I think you mentioned, sometimes it feels like art and poetry, deciding what to say and when to do it. Mm-hmm. I felt like that metric said there are quantifiable ways to determine when brand is important and how and when to invest in it. And I think those were good lessons for CMOs to sort of strike that balance with their boss.
And then I would say the other two analogies that came up that I think are useful. One is, think of it like the hype cycle. You want to quickly get through that trough of disillusionment, but it's going to happen. And then the other analogy is the marriage. You have to work on it. It's about communication. It's about understanding their communication versus your communication. And so that's not a bad analogy for it either.
That's good. I mean, he used 2 words, I think, in both sessions. I think nicely summed up sort of what you need to do as a CMO. I mean, you need to exude trust and reliability. Do what you say you're going to do. Be someone who, sort of closes the loop, follows up. Someone they don't have to worry about dropping things, and have accountability for things that inevitably aren't going to go well, aren't going to go the way you want them to, and have sort of a plan to sort of get them back on track. And so I thought, being able to exemplify those attributes helps you show up not just as a owner of marketing activities, but as a leader in the business. Someone that deserves a place, reporting directly to the CEO, someone that deserves a place in the boardroom on a regular basis.
Oh, last thing before I forget. Beware of benchmarks. We talked about beware of benchmarks.
Yeah.
And how some benchmarks can be helpful, like looking at marketing spend, especially if it's very similar cohorts.
Mm-hmm.
But conversion metrics, you got to just compare to yourself.
Yeah.
It's just hard, and you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble.
But not only benchmarks that you may find like in the market from analyst firms or wherever else, but also, other businesses. Well, my CEO friend over here, they did this and this worked for them. Every business is different, right? The only benchmarks, and Gary said this directly this morning, the only benchmarks you can really count on are those that come in your business, in your industry, your business, your culture, and use that as a way of growing. But no, I feel like we could definitely have Gary on again. I think, if we can convince him to come do I think I called it an AGA and ask Gary anything. Because there was in that second session, we ran out of time as people started to almost, so more questions, treated as a therapy session, lots of interesting things to share. If you want more from Gary, he had an article on the Insight Partners website that we had in the chat that we'll put into the Slack channel as well, so people can check out more of his stuff. And I think there were a few other things that we had one member that talked about a brand presentation he did to his board that we're going to record him talking through it next week, put that up on the Content Hub. Continue to be really just excited about how much we get from our featured guests, as well as just how much gets shared, Latney, between members of Coffee Talk. It's exciting.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Another great week. Hope everyone has an awesome weekend, catches some more end of summer sunshine, and we'll be back at it next week. Right, Matt?
That's right. We'll see you next week, guys.